Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for our second single serve design session webinar. I am super excited about sharing this webinar with you all. As you know, I am very passionate about responsible design across multiple medias, whether it's architecture, branding, graphic design, products, and fashion. And I just am also super excited to talk to other designers who are passionate about making sustainable, responsible impacts within the area of influence they are creating in. So today we're actually going to be talking about fashion. As you know, or maybe you don't know, but I'll share with you, I am super interested in fashion. I love fashion. I think that it's an area that all of us can learn to be more informed consumers and also more responsible consumers, and especially given that it's an area that each of us are making decisions about every single day. We wake up, we choose what we're going to put on for the day, and some of those choices are made based on how we feel, others are based on how we want people to perceive us. But for whatever reason and however we make decisions about fashion, it is an area that each of us can really make an impact in by just being more informed consumers and making more responsible choices. So today I'm excited to introduce you to Michael Liu, who has over 25 years of experience as an entrepreneur and creative in the fashion industry. He is with us as the founder of Faces Apparel. And at this time, I just want to introduce you to Michael. And Michael, if you want to go ahead and say hi to everyone, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
Hello, everybody on Facebook. I just wanted to say I'm really honored and appreciate having me to be able to just share what my journey has been through this fashion industry and what I've learned and what I continue to learn about how to just create a better social responsibility industry within the fashion world. And it's just been a great journey for me, and I'm excited to share it. And I really appreciate you guys letting me be on this webinar.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Michael. And if you could just maybe tell everyone a little bit about kind of your origin story within the fashion industry. Why fashion? How did you get started? And what was some of that early journey like for you?
Well, I guess it started way back in like 1984. Seems like a while ago. But my journey started around that time when I basically graduated from high school, and then I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. And then I just realized that I wanted to get involved in something that was going to be able to help the world and also use my artistic capabilities. So basically I went ahead and I just went to fashion school, studied, and started to realize that there's a way that we could impact the world through apparel, because I felt like everybody wears clothes. Everybody needs, wants to look somewhat fashionable in their own way. So I always thought that everybody is unique. So maybe I could create some things that will fit, just not myself, but also other people. So just to like fast forward, I basically went through the whole, normal training of learning how to do what fashion is, but knowing that art was always in my blood. And so then I had to learn a lot of the technical things. And then from there, I started my own company, working for several other companies, and was able to create a whole company that does everything from ideation to sourcing to development all the way through production. So we have a vast connections of facilities throughout the world that we're able to use and be able to create product and be able to use factories that are both ethically fair trade, really focus on sustainability. And we were able to find that in, as we journeyed through our company for the last 25 years. And so now we are focusing on doing different initiatives around the world that are going to be able to help create jobs, keep families together, and pay fair wage and be conscious about our world's future supply. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot of other things that have happened throughout the way, but I'm sure that, there could be questions and I can answer them as they come along.
So just a couple questions, Michael, is I know as we've gotten to know each other, you've talked about kind of your comprehensive background in fashion. Like, is that a pretty normal track for people who are interested in fashion? Or is it like, do typically people want to be more on the creative side or the administrative side? Like, is that unique, a unique way to approach, a fashion career?
Yeah, I think I think that what I had to do is I had to find out like what is it that I feel is my gift or talent, and then focus on the weaknesses and have to learn and be taught that. And then know that I've always will have a DNA in my blood about being creative, but I didn't really understand the whole practical end of it. So I seeked after the training of learning how to run a business, looking at numbers, looking at supply chain, understanding production assembly lines, understanding different cultures around the world. And then that's kind of the route that I went. And I think that that's probably, if you want to be well-rounded, that's the way to go. But if you want to be pure creative and be way out there, then by all means, you could skip all of that and just go ahead and just be creative and create wonderful things and not worry about the logistics. It's just that was the path that I wanted to go, because eventually I did want to own my own company, and I wanted to be able to impact the world in a way where I'm very well-rounded, not just being on one side of the spectrum of just being creative but not practical in business sense.
Yeah. So I think, again, as we've talked, that part of your experience really allowed you to see all kind of the entire process of how fashion is created, like the whole chain of how textiles are made, how do they get processed, how do they make it to a factory, and what's the process of actually going from textile to garment, and also get to know kind of the business side and the people that are involved in actually making clothing. So I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of that journey where, understanding the kind of process of fashion has maybe uniquely positioned you to be able to see what the impact of that process can have on garment workers, and also might have uniquely positioned you to think about how that process could be changed to be a more responsible process.
Well, I guess I could start off where I didn't even have that in my DNA. I looked at fashion strictly as just a business to make money and to basically sustain itself by pure revenue. So my attitude was really like, how cheap and how fast can I get product?
Yeah.
And so I did seek after these large factories, and we did have a lot of success where we were just down and dirty, just manufacturing and designing product that really didn't mean much to myself, but it was just a business. But then as I started to go deeper into my own soul, I started to realize that fashion can make an impact around the world because it's one of the largest industries. And how could I do that? By making a difference. So then that's when I started to really focus on the people and started to say like, well, you know what? It's people that make product. And I felt that I myself should start to get to know the people that are making product rather than going in their machines where they're just pushing out product every day and I'm just forcing lower prices. But as I started to get to know the workers, I started to understand the struggles they have because we're just purely not paying them enough money to survive, because I found out that they had, 3, 4 kids, they're taking care of the wife, they're taking care of their in-laws, they're taking care of family. And when they are removed from that and they have to leave their villages and go into these urban cities to seek after work, social issues because of the separation of family. And so when I realized that we weren't paying them enough money to just basically survive, we had to figure out a way how.
And so I know this journey really took you across the country, across kind of the globe, because you were able to actually personally go to several countries to see kind of conditions and what like a garment worker's kind of typical journey over a day is, to go from kind of home, where their home is to where their work is, and kind of the compensation associated with that. So maybe you can share a little bit of just like your actual on the ground research, if you will, and some of the places you visited to kind of observe what the conditions were.
They were very fortunate to go to different countries throughout the world where basically garment making is being used. And with a lot of that, I realized that, I went into these villages and I realized that it took them days to get home, and realized that the income that is being made isn't enough to even survive the family. And then I started to think that, my role was just to give them money, but then I didn't know that they were actually supporting families. And we can kind of relate to that because, we have parents, all had parents that worked really hard for us, but then they have to work 10 times, 20 times harder just to make ends meet because of the amount of money that we're paying on workers. And it's kind of goes through the whole supply chain where we as customers always demand lower prices, things on sale, but who it affects the people. It affects everything from the person that is picking the cotton to the company that's spinning the yarn, and then the company that's knitting it, and then the company dyeing it, and then the company cutting it and sewing it, and then finishing it, and then boxing it and shipping it. There's probably so many hands of people that are touching that one garment that I realize that overall it's our responsibility through realize that are we paying the right price, but we tend to always want things cheaper. And who does it affect? It affects the people that are making the product.
Yeah, and this was part of my own conviction and journey with fashion was over time, just the amount of disposability that I kind of looked at clothing with, like, oh, I can wear it a couple times and just throw it away, or not really care what happens to it because it only cost me $5 for the t-shirt. And yeah. But there's a human cost to that. And for me, that's when it really hit me that I've got to get serious about, as a consumer, really being informed and understanding that what I value and what I purchase matters, not just the kind of monetary cost, but what's the long-term value and what's the long-term cost to the people producing these products, to the environment, and what if we're all racing to the bottom for the cheapest cost of goods, there is a real price beyond just whether it's less expensive to our wallet. There's other expenses and other costs that we should be informed about as consumers. So, and that kind of brings me to my chicken and the egg question, which is, is whether it's fashion or other types of industries, do you feel that the fashion industry is responding to the consumer demand of lower priced goods, or do you think, creators within the fashion industry are creating that market? So I don't know if you have thought about that at all, but it'd be interesting to hear your take on, is it kind of a both and? Is it you guys are just responding to the market, or fashion's responding to the market, or what do you think the kind of need or the desire for such inexpensive goods, where is that all coming from?
Well, I guess it all starts from the consumer, because it's all about, supply and demand. And, all the retailers are doing, they analyze the market and they realize that a pair of socks have to sell at this price for this much volume. Mm-hmm. And they've done research, and regardless of what it is, 10 pairs of socks for $3, whatever that is, that's what it has to be, because that's the consumers are asking for that. Mm-hmm. So I really put it down that it all starts with the consumer on dictating what they're willing to pay. But then there's a small handful of people that are willing to pay for higher price goods because of better quality. Maybe the design is better, or it's being made in a country that basically labor is more money, but they have better quality, better fabrics. So it just depends, but it all starts with the consumer. We're only reacting towards what the consumer needs, because we don't want to be cheaper. Everybody wants to pay more. Do you think that I want to pay 30% cheaper than what they should be getting for fair wage just because the supply is asking for that? I can't do that. And honestly, when I decided to turn our business to more of a ethical, fair trade business, our business actually tanked 60% because people didn't care. They said, Mike, we love your product. We think you could do great stuff, but your prices are just not reasonable. Nobody is going to pay that price. So we took a toll on it, on our business, because we wanted to do what was right. And where it was before because of the supply chain, the supply and demand.
That's awesome.
So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it totally does. And that's a great segue to talk a little bit. I'd love to, we've talked a little bit about origins and kind of the fashion industry. I'd love to spend some time talking specifically about Faces Apparel, which you're the founder of, and how that, what is your ethos and approach to Faces Apparel, given everything you've seen and within your incredible amount of experience in the fashion industry, really trying to take a different, more responsible approach to how Faces Apparel operates. Can you talk a little bit about, like, how did you start that? Why did you start it? And what is kind of the ethos behind it? And how what you are doing with the workforce is different than what you might see in other fashion industry chains?
Okay, well, we have basically, we have two areas of our business. One area of the business is basically with Faces Apparel. We call it Faces Apparel because we want everybody to recognize that there is a person, there's a face behind every single product. And that's basically how the name came about. We did start a nonprofit organization a while back called Faces Behind the Label. And that was just in conjunction on advocating workers that make product that we wear and use every day, and that we should make acknowledgement about them. But then we created a for-profit organization called Faces Apparel, and we wanted to really capture the people that make the product. And so what we did is that we wanted to do more than just go to factories and work with factories that have ethical values and that are under RAP accreditation or BSCI. These are all international accreditations that are about social enterprise and fair trade and fair wages. So we said, well, what is one of the biggest issues that the world faces? It's basically lack of jobs and family unity. And we felt that with the manufacturing population around the world with migrant workers, they leave their families to seek after work. And then that's not healthy, because when you have family separation, that's one social issue. The second issue is they're looking for work. And if they don't find work, they feel that they're not being responsible for their family. And then they start to have social issues on their own because they're thousands of miles away. So we were going, well, if we're going to have a social enterprise company, we got to have a social responsibility initiative. And what can we do as a social company to really make a difference? We're really small on this spectrum, but we have an idea, and we planted at that idea in 2 different countries, and they're starting to work. Where basically we created these recycled old shipping containers, and we refurbished them and made them into these mobile factories, where we put these factories in remote areas so families could stay together, and we're bringing work to them. And then now they could help us make product that we're paying them way above minimum wage, or we're paying them way above fair wages in that country or in that city or in that region. And we do establish ourselves as a business in those countries, not as a nonprofit. So we pay our taxes. We do everything that is legal in that country. And people respect us more because they ask us, well, why are you guys doing this? You guys run it like an NGO, but you guys are a business. And it's just because of the passion that I have and our company has, is to basically help people and to recognize the workers. So our big initiative is basically bringing work, keeping families together, and hopefully be able to have more of these micro factories in different countries around the world, especially in the apparel industry, so then we could bring work to them and not have to bring work to the big cities. So that's where the whole thing that happens with pricing and being cheaper. Obviously, going to a big city, you get better prices. You go to a smaller village, you're paying a little bit more. But when you talk about pricing, you're only looking at say $3 or $4 more for an item that you're going to buy versus it being less. It's cheap, but if you pay just a little bit of money, you're going to be able to get something that is going to make you feel better, and it's going to be more responsible too at the same time.
Yeah, and personally, one of the things that I've thought a lot about is this idea of responsible consumption and value, and why, what do we value and why, and that why is it so easy for me to throw something away that's $3 or $4 rather than hold on to it, repair it, etc. If it's a shirt that has a hole or I've worn it twice and I'm okay with throwing it away. I think part of it is because we assign value based on how much something costs in terms of actual dollars. So if you can spend $3 or $4 more on the same item, and you actually get to contribute to being a more responsible consumer, being able to support a social enterprise that cares about working conditions. And also in the case of what you all are doing, you've gone beyond just the immediate industry you're working in, but have really looked to be sustainable in other ways, such as now workers don't have to commute, miles and miles away to their job. They can have a short commute, walk to work. You're bringing work to them in their context, helping keep families together. So it's just across the spectrum. You guys are doing such awesome work and just really trying to fill a need and really be responsible across multiple ways of looking at the business. So I just really applaud that, and I think it's so exciting the way you're kind of strategically looking at how to meet needs across multiple kind of parts of the process rather than just one part of the process, because fashion it's such a multi-pronged process, from, as you said, all the way from the raw material to weaving the fabric to actually constructing a garment. There's so many steps involved. So to be able to address as many as possible within the production of a piece of clothing is just an awesome endeavor. So with that, I would love to open it up to some of our audience questions. And I think we've got a couple to start with. I'm gonna go ahead and start with the first one. So Michael, what advice can you give any company or self-starter who is feeling discouraged after going fair trade?
You got to believe in your values, because it was very discouraging for us at the beginning to be the deep and cheap factory or manufacturer or design company. And then when all of a sudden we switched over, and I mean we switched over very fast, it was hard. But the thinking is that if you do your marketing correctly and you know who your customer is, they'll understand it. And that's probably one of the hardest things to do, because when it comes down to it, ask all your friends, what are they willing to pay for something? And they all say, oh, I want to get whatever, as much as I can, as cheap as possible. But I would say just keep believing in what your values are, what you want to do, and don't give up, because passion is in your heart. And that's what you can't give up. Your values are what makes you, and you can't give that up too. So I made this transition about, like, say 9 years ago, and I'm still in business. So that means there's some people that like working with us and understand our values. So we've really switched over to a different direction, but hang in there.
Awesome. And just the transition between kind of the previous model and the new model that you are implementing with Bases Apparel, was that, would you say you had to shrink? And it's almost like you have to shrink a little bit in order to make a greater impact, because is the volume less now than what you were doing before? What was kind of the difference in your range of business?
Well, we have different facets in our business. We do areas where we just strictly do designing, and then we also have the other two areas of doing sourcing, and then we have full production. So for us, obviously it's the production part that really affects more of the the wages and the workers.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that significantly dropped a lot. But then we started to find that there's a customer base up there that is just higher price point garments that will pay more money. And they actually, their attitude is, we don't care what it costs. We just want a great product, and we don't want the people to be paid unfairly.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that are out there like that. There are brands out there that are willing to be at that level and take that risk. But they've already have their niche, and they know what their customers are willing to pay, and they don't go below that. It's the big mass stores, the big shops, the big box stores that really flex their muscles on pricing, and we all know who they are. And we kind of try to stay away from them, but we are advocating and trying to talk to a lot of those big boxes that they have to change. And it's not easy, but they have an ear, they're listening, they're trying to figure it out.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question. Where have you seen the biggest change or results since going fair trade?
In what sense? Like, I'm sorry, I know it's a question.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest result that we had is probably just within our own company. We feel like we're doing what's right.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably our biggest impact, that I personally could sleep better knowing that the people are getting paid fairly.
Yeah.
And that, you know, even though we do outsource to other factories that have ethical standards and are accredited through fair wage, fair trade, and through RAP, basically, it just makes me feel better, and knowing that we're making an impact. And I think that was probably the fastest result that we got, just knowing that we made that switch over.
Can you share a little bit with us about which countries you currently have your mobile kind of factories in?
Well, we're only in 2 countries, but our vision is to be in 96 countries if we could. But right now we did a prototype. We have a prototype in Bangladesh. And then we also have a full built out microfactory in the Philippines. And basically they both were strategically planted. The one in Bangladesh was planted outside of the big city and focused on women that just would not get hired for many reasons. And they were left alone and abandoned. And we went after them through an organization in Bangladesh that said that these are the people that need work. And these are the people that need their families. And so we started to test the water there, and it became pretty successful. Then for some reason, we went to every country. We probably went into so many different countries to find out which was the next place. And then we ended up being in the Philippines. And this one was basically strategically planted because it was a group of people that were in the barangay, or the villages, that were basically working in dump sites, and the kids weren't going to school, and the fathers were separated. And so we decided to build this in an area where they could be at home with family. The kids could go to school now. The wives or the mothers could now work in a micro factory, and the husbands could help out too. So that changed their life, and we partnered with a big organization in the Philippines doing that also. So we don't go there on our own. We have to go there with people that we know, and people that have been in the national country for over, our requirements are over 15 years. They have to be at the ground level, 15 years working with the locals, understanding the problems, and obviously having good history. So we don't do this alone. We do it with locals that understand the culture, and we kind of just help bring in our gifting of managing and providing supply of the chain of supply chain, sorry.
So it sounds like actual partnering with other strategic nonprofits or people within countries familiar with the conditions has been really critical in helping with the success of the launch of these micro factories and Faces Apparel. Are there any other kind of nonprofits that you guys are either strategically working with, whether it's domestically or overseas, and kind of what's kind of the relationship between them, if you are?
Well, we're really not working. Well, we're working with nonprofits, obviously, that are on the front line in country. We're only so we work with an organization that is a nonprofit in the Philippines, and we have an organization with a nonprofit in Bangladesh, and they're basically are the ones that are providing people and the management, and then we basically do all the training, and we build out the micro factory, and we teach them how to run it on their own. So we don't have any we'll say American Western people working there. These are all locals. So there's not any of the westernized people going there, because we really wanted to keep it a local operation so they could be sustainable and also create business on their own, not only business from us, but also try to create a economic business that they could make product and sell back to their country or their region. So that's what we've been really focusing on, is that we could introduce them the skills of making garments and managing it and paying and creating, a budget and everything else. But we ultimately want them to find their niche in the market in their own country, so they're not relying on our business, that they could create their own business.
That's so great. So if you could give advice to two different groups, one would be new designers or new entrepreneurs interested in the fashion industry, and the other would be consumers. What would your kind of thoughts or advice be to those two different groups, and how they could be more aware or more responsible in how they're going to interact with the fashion industry? So on one side, it would be people who want to work in the fashion industry, and on the other, consumers of fashion. If you could kind of in a nutshell advise on how we can be more aware or responsible of the issues within the industry, kind of what would you say to us?
Well, humor, because we all work hard and we all want to save money, and every time I buy something, it's like, oh, you could get that cheaper somewhere else, why do you pay that much money? I think that the consumers just have to be aware of where their product is being made, and take in consideration of the country that it's coming from, and know that, wow, I'm getting this item for this much money, but is it really paying their bills? Is it really enough? You just don't know. And I think that you just have to be more conscious of not looking so much for the sell items, because the sell items is what really affects the cost, is to just pay the fair price of what is out there in the market. Don't always look for everything that is so cheap, because that's what it's going to affect. So I would have consumers just be aware of where the product is being made, not look so much for the sales, because we live in a very rich country. We could afford a lot of things. And to save $1 or 50 cents or even $2 on something, it's just going to take a cup of coffee a day away from us. It's not going to make or break us. So just think of those little simple things. To somebody that wants to come into the industry, I just think continue to be creative. Don't go with the grain. Go with things that are so different out there that it's going to be hard. It's going to be tough. Go the route that is going to be difficult, but is going to impact the world. Because for me, I started off late in my career of wanting to make a difference, where I think that kids, or the generation now, is being a little bit more aware of what's going around in the world. And I would say start as soon as you can to make a difference. I had the opportunity to be able to talk to a graduating business class in Texas, and they were all graduates. And I basically looked in the room and I saw about 100 people that were going to be graduating next year, and they all wanted to do social enterprise business. And I just went, wow, that's amazing that this next generation wants to make a difference, wants to change. But as a creative person, don't just keep thinking outside of the box. Just think of crazy ideas, but execute them. Find people around you that can help you do the things that you can't do. And don't take the whole burden on yourself. because you can't do it alone. And I learned the hard way. You got to bring people around you that complement you.
Well, thank you so much, Michael. We love what you're doing. And I would love it if, before we kind of start to close up, if you could just let everyone know if they're interested in knowing more about Faces Apparel, or if there's a way to follow you, if maybe you can share the website, or if you have a Twitter, Instagram, any kind of social media way for people to reach out to you and hear more.
So, we're just excited about the great stuff that we're doing. And yeah, you could see us definitely on Instagram, Facebook, and our website, which is facesapparel.com.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And for all of you that are listening, just a couple of updates for what's upcoming. Our next single serve design webinar is going to be with Kelly Farley from Rebuilding Exchange. They're doing awesome work in Chicago. So if you were ever curious about what happens to all that stuff you throw away, please tune in, because they are going to be sharing with us what they're doing to recuperate and reuse products after they have been discarded. So Kelly Farley will be joining us next December 7th. We will send more info as we get closer to that date. But Michael, again, we just want to thank you for all the work you're doing and everything you just shared. It's amazing work, and looking forward to see you guys in 96 countries over the upcoming years.
Yeah, it's a big dream, but you know what? You got to start somewhere. Dream big, start and build to scale. That's the key thing. Remember, build to scale.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. And thank you, Michael. We'll talk again soon.